High School being overcrowded. And I was there pushing the idea that we needed small schools and talking about how we could make sure that those schools succeeded. So that's one of the projects. I've also been very active in South LA, working at Fremont High School in math and science, and a whole bunch of other things that will probably come up in the discussion today. But I'm really running, it's similar to what Rex said, because from a parent point of view, and many of you will agree with this, Los Angeles Unified School District is not good enough. It just doesn't reach high enough, it doesn't have high enough expectations, and there are too many things wrong with it, and there are too many excuses made for why things are wrong with it. When a friend's daughter comes home in tears because she was marked truant in the class because she had to wait in line at the only functioning open girls' bathroom in her high school, then to me, the schools aren't good enough. You know, when we have a 30% rate of kids who are not on track to graduate right now, the schools aren't good enough. And when we have all those kids sitting in Jefferson Auditorium for 6 weeks, not being programmed into classes, the schools aren't good enough. And we need to push to make the schools better. There are many reasons, I think, that the school district doesn't serve the kids and the families as well as it should. But there's one reason that they make a decision to spend facilities money on iPads rather than fixing bathrooms. And I think that it's because of the makeup of the school board right now. When I'm talking about change in LAUSD, what I'm talking about is bringing a new voice to the table on the school board. It's a voice that hasn't been heard much on the school board. And if you ask parents around the district, they'll tell you the same thing. And that's the voice of parents. They're not represented on the school board. The school board is big. It's the biggest. What I mean to say is that the school district is big. It's the biggest district that has a school board in the country. It has a $7 billion budget, and there are lots of people who are interested in getting a piece of that budget. And that's why it's very expensive to run this race, and that's why a lot of people are interested in putting forth candidates to sit on the school board. But parents have not organized to put anybody on the school board yet. And that's how decisions can be made that don't help kids. Because there's not the sense that when you make a decision, you feel that at home. And you would get that sense if you had a parent on the school board. And so that's really why I'm running. So if you want schools that create conditions for learning and that focus on the quality of learning in the schools, quality of education, then you should put a parent on the school board. And I'm here to make that argument tonight and to earn your support, get your vote hopefully, and talk about some issues. So thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. One item that I neglected to do, and I apologize to the candidates, but I skipped public comment. So is there anyone in the public that has any announcements or comments that are not related to the candidates or the candidate forum? No? Great. Thank you very much. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the portion where we have the question and answer.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Yes. Okay. I'm hearing feedback from my committee members, and in the spirit of fairness, because we're a city-certified organization, we make sure that we follow all the rules. So rather than have one candidate ask each different questions, instead we're going to allow all of the candidates to answer the same question. I will read the question and then give each candidate 2 minutes to answer the question. So we'll go in order from Mr. Kaiser to Mr. Rodriguez to Mr. Thomas. You will each have 2 minutes, and then following that, you will have 1 minute to give a rebuttal if you so choose to. And then following that, we'll go to the next question. Okay? That being said, we're going to, and if there's any need for any more water, please let me know. If there's any, we need to stop, you let me know, we'll keep on going. Okay, great. Okay. Are there any other special requests? Please just let me know. I've posted these forms before, and I find the best format is a little bit more casual. We can really have a conversation back and forth with each other. Okay, so I will start off with this first question by Daniel Viacia. This question is, what can you propose to be done differently when addressing low-performing teachers that are tenured and union protected? I'm going to ask the question a second time. What can you propose to be done differently when addressing low-performing teachers that are tenured and union protected? We'll start with Mr.
Okay.
Kaiser.
As a matter of fact, during our closed session yesterday, there were 2 low-performing teachers who were terminated from the district. It doesn't happen too often because there aren't that many low-performing teachers. We have teachers that, in some cases, need additional professional development as new programs come in. For example, we have the Common Core, we have the local control funding formula, the LCAP. We have all these new issues, and they all require that for people to follow them correctly, they all require training. And there hasn't necessarily been adequate training and professional development for the teachers. But low-performing teachers, whether or not they're members of the union, there's a process, there's a due process, but every month, a couple up and go. To say that the district is keeping a pool of low-performing teachers does a disservice to all the teachers in LA Unified.
Thank you very much.
So first and foremost, yes, what do we mean by low-performing? So we've got to have a system that is fair, that ensures that we're looking at multiple measures to then identify whether a teacher is low-performing or not. But let's assume that we actually have that system in place, which we don't right now. But if we do, and we define a teacher as low-performing, that should not be a surprise to us. It means that the instructional leaders, the principals in the schools have been doing ongoing classroom observations, and that teacher has been supported over time. What that requires is high-quality professional development. It requires that our administrators see themselves as instructional leaders. It requires that our programs that are preparing administrators know how to prepare instructional leaders. And then, of course, it requires an environment that has the conditions for a professional learning community, so that teachers are working together with leaders to ensure that teachers are succeeding. Now, if all that's in place, and we've got a teacher who is not performing to par, because we've got to put the highest quality, the best teachers in front of our kids, then there has to be a swift and equitable and fair due process system, and the system has to move quickly, because we want to make sure that, one is that it's fair and equitable, but that we do move people along if need be. Now, if they're tenured, that's problematic, right? Because at that point, we've got to work further with them. There's not much we can do other than reassignments, but I believe that in this district there are thousands of great teachers that want to be better, and that the system's failing them as much as the system's failing our kids. And we can create a system that is all about and focused on powerful teaching and learning, and that all decisions are made in that respect.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah. I don't want to... There are lots of great teachers in the district, but if you've ever encountered some of these teachers who aren't so great, as a parent, you have that sinking feeling that your kid is stuck in class for a whole year, or sometimes multiple years, with somebody who isn't doing the job. Your kid comes home with a bad grade or isn't learning math, and there's nothing you can do about the teacher who just isn't doing the job. In my experience, our elementary school teachers are well supported and doing a pretty good job, not at every school, but at a lot of schools, because we focus on elementary. But in middle school and high school, we have some very serious problems with teachers. At one of the schools I visited recently, a teacher said to me that there was a new principal, and he'd been teaching at this school for 30 years, and it was the first time in 30 years that a principal had walked into his classroom to observe what he'd been doing. And this was a pretty good teacher, but there's another teacher actually at my son's high school who marked kids marked kids absent for bad behavior and prevented them from being able to go to the prom and from graduating on time because they had too many absences, even though they'd been there every day. And there was very little that parents could do about that. So there are lots of cases like that, and it's really an issue. Again, it's not an issue of poor teaching, really. It's an issue of not having the supports in place. It's not listening to parents, and it's not having the supports in place for the teachers and for the principals. The principals have the major job. Their primary job is to go into those classrooms and make sure those teachers are doing their job. And too many principals don't do that. I could list. There was a principal who was at Belmont for a long time who was always behind closed doors. There's another elementary school principal in our neighborhood who never opens her door and goes out into the schools and doesn't know the name of the kids. So I'm not here to put down people, but as parents, you notice all those problems, and we need to realize that those are real problems. But they're also solvable problems. Once you put a good principal in place in those schools, they turn around immediately. Anybody who's had that experience can see. We have a new principal at Marshall High, and things are changing a lot. And what's her secret? She's paying attention to instruction. She cares about parents who come and say, my kid doesn't know what homework is assigned to them. My kid never got a syllabus. There are no objectives written on the chalkboard in the morning. There's no activity when they come into the classroom. There's no classroom management. All these things are things that teachers learned in teacher training programs, and they've developed bad habits over time because our schools don't support them. And so that's really what it looks like in schools. And what we need to do is turn that culture around and create schools where teachers want to do well, where teachers do well because everybody expects them to do well. Their colleagues expect them to do well. Their principal respects parents and expects them to do well. The kids give them rewards because they're doing well. And that's a culture change we need to make at LAUSD. But the first thing we need to do is recognize that actually is the situation in our school. So when you look at Huntington Park High School or Jefferson High, that's what's going on in the schools. That's what's happening. And that's what we need to change. And we need to recognize it first.
Thank you very much. We now have time for a
I'd like to repeat
1 minute rebuttal for each candidate. Okay, one second, I'm sorry. I want to make sure that... Okay, you can begin.
Thank you. First of all, I think the board would be surprised, maybe my opponent here would be surprised to learn I'm a parent. My two sons graduated from Marshall High School after having their careers at LAUSD. Tamar Gallitson is a parent on the board. She has young children. Our board president, Richard Gladovic, is a parent. He has kids who went to LAUSD public schools. So to say that there are no parents on the board is not accurate. Besides being a parent, by the way, I'm also a grandparent. I'm also a teacher, serve as a teacher. I've also been an administrator. I was the information technology director for the Pasadena Unified School District. I've also been a board member.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next.
The thing that I will add is that this is a systems issue. So part of what is the problem is that we're not focused on the actual problem, and we're not solution-oriented. And the district tends to kind of just do the same thing it's always done and not create new solutions. And it's really important to do that. Our leaders are basically middle managers right now. They have no control to make decisions. They don't get any resources to spend on those decisions. And of course, they don't get held accountable. And as a result, they're not serving our teachers and they're not serving our kids or our communities. And we've got to free them up from that. The school district's got to be a service provider to the schools and work for the schools, not the other way around, which is what's currently happening. Our principals need to be trained. They need to be valued for their work and their worth, and in turn, they need to support our teachers. When we have teachers that are not performing, as far as I'm concerned, it's because we've got leaders who are not leading. And we've got to give our leaders not only the opportunity and the resources, but also the accountability around leading for their schools.
Thank you.
Just a little bit. I want to clarify. When I say parent, I mean, I'm talking about a current parent in the school right now who has kids in the schools right now. So it's kind of a code word. You can put questions around it. My father is a parent as well, but he doesn't know what's going on in the schools right now. So that's what I'm talking about. People who actually have kids in the schools right now and who, feel it. What's happened in the last several years is we've had a huge budget crunch. So the schools in the last 6 years have been considerably different than they were 6 years before that.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, it is from Dr. John Fernandez. Many parents feel that they have no voice or power at their child's school. What would you do to empower parents more and achieve greater parent involvement? And you can begin. I'm sorry, I heard the last question twice. Let me read this one twice again. I apologize for that. I'm trying to...
Should we take turns?
Yeah, maybe we'll do it in a different order.
Oh, yes. We'll go in opposite order. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once. Okay. Okay, so she has time for me. I'm going to just focus on the questions then. Okay. Many parents feel that they have no voice or power at their child's school. What would you do to empower parents more and achieve greater parent involvement?
Yeah. Hold on for a second. I should have an opinion since I've talked about being a parent so much, so this is where I have to say something. I guess the main point I make is I've heard from a lot of people in schools, I've heard other things too, but that parents don't have time to be involved, or parents are too busy. We've tried to reach out to parents, but they don't respond, and I don't buy that. I think parents want to be involved, and the most important thing is to really open the door to them. And a lot of schools don't open the door. Even in Marshall High School, I had a policy of putting on a suit, which I now do for the debate all the time. But before that, I didn't, so that I walked in seeming very official and important, and I had to kind of feel like I had to really push my way in there. And then eventually, I built up enough trust that I was welcome there. And I was, a very, very active parent. Other parents weren't as bold. And this happens at an awful lot of schools, but the schools that do open their doors, and the principal is in the main office every day, and she's welcoming parents, or she's out in the yard, or he's out in the yard, it makes a huge difference. The other thing to realize is that people shouldn't expect 100% parent involvement. If you have 10% parent involvement, those are the parents who are really active, and they'll reach out to their other parents, and that's really good. So we shouldn't feel like we need 100% parent involvement. But then the other thing that parents really need is information. So it's not so much giving them things to do, potlucks to attend or cultural nights or whatever. It's giving them as much information as possible about what their kids are doing in the classroom today. So the best thing is to know that your kid studied, my son studied FDR yesterday. If I knew that ahead of time, he happened to tell me, but many of us have kids who don't come home and tell us what they're studying. And the more we know about that, the more we can engage with our kids, and then we can either help them or just talk to them about these things, and that's what improves their performance in class. They get better grades when we as parents can talk to them about that, and the only way we know is when teachers tell us what's going on in classes. That's number one.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I believe that predominantly we live in a fear-based culture around our schools, and that's fear of bringing the outside in, fear of the principal getting in trouble with senior management, fear of teachers getting caught not doing the right thing. And that is a definite no-no to progress and to achievement. You've got to be in a space where everybody feels engaged, cared for, I would even say loved in some way, because we are a community that's trying to build up young people and build up medium-aged people, build up all of our people, right? And so we've got to change the conversation. It's got to be about a culture of trust. We start that with culturally responsive practices around parent engagement. And what that means is that our leaders and teachers need to know what it means to engage parents in el sereno, what it means to engage them in Los Pides, what it means to engage them in Maywood. And those might be similar in some ways, but could be vastly different as well. And that doesn't happen. The district only knows how to do one thing, one size fits all. There are great leaders who are doing this in schools, and we're not learning from them. That's a tragedy, too. There are great places that should be models for the entire district. Last thing I'll say around this, it's really about ensuring, at our public schools, I say this to the leaders all the time, when a parent walks in that door, you assume that that parent has left a job and will be gone for X number of hours, and that means that that parent will not get paid for those hours, and that means their kids will not be able to have something extra or special on the weekend. Therefore, it's your job to get out of your chair and go out there, say hello, what do you need, how can I help you? And that is just a very small shift around understanding that our parents are the most important partners, and I keep talking about that. They are our partners.
Thank you. Mr. President.
In Southgate, we have a parent group, Los Padres Unidos, that goes out, volunteers, keeps track of what the students are doing, monitors the school to make sure there aren't strangers there. They're an active parent group. I was just on my way here, just before I came tonight, I was at Bushnell Avenue Elementary School. There was a room full, an auditorium with, they had to bring in extra chairs for the parents to come in. They're having a meeting tonight about a Proposition 39 co-location where a charter school, could be a PUC school maybe, coming in to take out away resources and classroom space from kids at the elementary school. Actually, I hope that my two opponents will speak to Prop 39 and co-location and why they think it's a good thing. The parents also have, at every school, we've built parent centers at the schools. We've outfitted them with computers and other resources so the parents can come in. If they don't have a computer at home, they can sign on and they can get emails from the kids' teachers. They can find out what the kids' attendance has been. They can find out in many cases what the kids' homework is. It was unfortunate when Jefferson High School was mentioned. Jefferson High School was a victim of the computer debacle, the Mises crisis. The computer that was supposed to keep track of all these things at the schools didn't work. It didn't work so that the teachers didn't know where their students were. The office didn't know what the attendance was. It's been fixed now, including my staff, including myself, going on, we were inputting data on the keyboards at Jefferson High School. The parent volunteers were coming in for that to help us get through the crisis until the computers could be repaired or reprogrammed so that they work properly.
Thank you very much. Now we have 1 minute for rebuttal, if you so choose to, in the same order.
They don't want to talk about Prop 39.
Well, let me take that on. I'll go first.
Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Thomas.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I will say that that's not a PUC school, first of all. I've always respected our communities. We've been offered spaces at Franklin, and I said no, because Franklin needs the space. Because this is my community, I live here, I know exactly what's going on, and I don't want to encroach on our schools. So let's be accurate about that. Secondly, think about parents. You know, I don't have children myself. My mom always says, but you've got thousands of kids that you've been working with for so long. I have a sacred trust with other people's children. That is, I have a sacred trust to other people's children. And so, yes, I understand the parent perspective is really important. It doesn't diminish my experience and my work for the last 20 years and what we've been able to do and what we want to continue to do. And that's really critical. I want to make sure that that's understood. You know, I'm a professor. I've got a doctorate in educational leadership. I've got every credential possible to be able to lead a school system and lead public governance of a school system. But most importantly, I've got an understanding of the community.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else, Roberta?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about Prop 39.
At some point, we may have to cut down the rebuttal time because our cut the rebuttal, as we're going along, we had 15 more questions that were presented.
Yeah.
So, so I'm sure we'll get a chance to speak about everything.
I thought we were going to try to call.
Let me see. So the next question, I'm going to ask it twice. This time, Mr. Rodriguez, you're going to start, and then after that, whichever candidate would like to go second can. I'm going to read the question twice. Do you think that it is wise to spend funding for ethnic studies instead of tutoring to improve grade level? And this question is from L. Art Camelio, who is a Gliselle Park resident. The question once again is, do you think it is wise to spend funding for ethnic studies instead of tutoring to improve grade level?
So first I'll say that I believe that the ethnic studies policy that was passed, although it's an important thing for our young people to understand and be part of a multicultural world, that policy was kind of empty. Not only was it thin, it basically said it put the cart before the horse, it also didn't put any dollars to it. So, and I know that's supposed to be worked out, but my job on the governing board will be to ensure that policy gets more robust and that if we're going to do it, that we're going to do it well. It's true, the district has a lot of different needs, and what it doesn't do a good job at is prioritizing. And it shouldn't be either or, right? Of course we've got to give our kids intervention, and we've got to make sure that they are up to academic snuff to be able to succeed. And we're not going to give them ethnic studies in lieu of that. We've got to give them that right? And so decisions get made on this board without looking at the bigger picture. Policies get passed without any funding attached to them. That's an empty policy. And then more importantly, once the policy is put in place, the train runs, and there aren't feedback mechanisms to see, is the policy even working? Are the classes, is the curriculum great? Is it integrated with the rest of the school curriculum? And frankly, the graduation requirements were lowered. And the A through G is going through, and now people have to make a choice. Well, they can't make a choice, meaning that they can't take higher level classes to get them into great universities because they now have another requirement, which is the multi-ethnic studies class. So I think that in some ways this polarization that's happened on the board has not led to good conversation and dialogue to do what's in the best interest of kids. And that needs to be addressed. This board's got to come together, it's got to work well together, and it's got to do the right thing for kids.
Thank you.
Well, actually, ethnic studies, I'm proud to say that I was the board member who got the motion for ethnic studies and organized to have it put into place. It's been by far the most popular program or class that has been discussed by parent groups and community groups since I've been on the school board. It doesn't have to be an either-or, as the question implies. We have some great after-school programs, Beyond the Bell, LACER, can't think of the other ones off the top of my head, but we have after-school programs now that include tutoring. They also include an after-school meal program, the supper program. I just recently managed to have it expanded. It's a federally subsidized program to serve supper to the kids in the afternoon who are at school in tutoring or enrichment programs or athletic programs. They don't have to, it's been very popular with the kids. They're actually eating it and having good nutrition. In the next year and a half, we'll have expanded it by 80,000 meals a day to kids who otherwise would go hungry, and whether they were in tutoring or not, can't do as well because they're paying attention to the sound of their stomach growling more than they can just pay attention to their textbooks. There are other programs that we have. The after-school programs actually, the former superintendent, Dr. Daisy, cut the after-school programs and the tutoring, along with the academic decathlon and the all-city marching band and adult ed and early childhood education, because he was in love with algebra and English skills. You need to have those, but you need to have the other programs as well. to have well-rounded students.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is actually a pet peeve of mine. I think this is a perfect example of what's wrong with the board. And yes, Bennett was the one, Mr. Kaiser was the one who was a major proponent of an ethics studies class. He's completely wrong. It is about trade-off. So the person who asked that question is correct. When you introduce a new graduation requirement, the first question is, what are you giving up? Because the schedule is already full. It's hard to take the classes that you need. It's hard to get the kids to graduate. So adding a new class is a trade-off. That's exactly what it is. And so, that's the first question we have to ask. The other thing is, what problem was it solving? This district has a couple of priorities. It wants to reach a 100% graduation rate in the next few years. It has an issue about reclassifying English language learners. It has an issue about literacy for kids who aren't reading at grade level. How does ethnic studies address any of those? Those should be the priorities, and ethnic studies class is not addressing those priorities. Now, is there an issue with tolerance? Is there an issue with bullying? Is there an issue with appreciating everybody in our diverse community? Maybe there is. Schools can decide that, and they can integrate those solutions to those problems on a school-by-school basis. You know what's going to happen with ethnic studies? It's the same thing that happens to other programs like this that come down from the board. A great example is service learning, which seemed like a great idea and basically doesn't exist in schools anymore. What's going to happen is the teachers are going to look at it, the schools are going to look at it, and they're going to say, can we ignore it for a while? They're going to try to ignore it. That'll last about a year and a half. And then if the district really brings down the boot and says, no, you have to do ethnic studies, they'll try to get waivers. And all the more affluent schools will get waivers for it. And then another couple of years will pass, and maybe a few schools will have ethnic studies. And they'll make that decision that we're pretending we don't have to make now, which is they're going to have to give something up. And then we'll find out whether they give up tutoring.
Thank you. Now we have time for cut it down to a 30-second rebuttal. Was there anyone who wants to make a rebuttal?
I hope if there's anybody from the media here that they put in our answers about ethnic studies in tonight's story. The ethnic studies, all of those things, reading skills, math skills, art programs, those can all be incorporated into ethnic studies. Remember, the kids need to read books, they need to research, and they need to look. As they learn about each other, they will learn to have better interchanges among themselves, and thereby reducing the bullying and reducing other issues that have a negative overtone. The whole purpose of the ethnic studies was to make our campuses more peaceful and allow students to have a better understanding about their backgrounds and heritage.
Thank you very much. Was there any further? Okay. Ready for the next question. This question is by Melanie, who is a student. I am a student from a charter school. When you get elected, will you give a chance to the rest of my peers to attend a charter school? And will you expand charter schools throughout the district? We will start this question with Mr. Thomas.
The school board, it doesn't actually have the choice of expanding charter schools. That's something that the charter schools themselves decide, and the state law, I kind of want to look at the student who wrote this question, but the state law allows an additional 100 charter schools to be chartered statewide every year. So that's something that's driven from the outside, and then the district has to figure out how to deal with it. And I'm an advocate for being rational about that process and planning for it as much as possible. Every time a charter school opens, it has a fiscal impact on the bottom line of the rest of the school district budget, and that's a fair issue that the anti-charter people have with it, and we need to recognize that and plan for new charters opening. I also think we should plan for charters, I think this answers your question exactly, in the communities that that, or for the instructional needs that are most needed. In Arizona, for instance, they have a number of charters that focus on special needs kids, and that's something that, and I'm just saying we have a discussion about this. If there is something that the district needs that it doesn't have, perhaps charters can fill that role. And I think we should be constructive in our discussion about charters. I think charters should be more integrated. And actually this gets to the Prop 39, which is the issue of having a charter school on the same campus as a regular public school. We have to build bridges between these two communities. There are over 200 charters in LAUSD. They're not going away. There are ways to integrate them. There are ways to deal with issues about equity and equality. There are ways to deal with issues about budget. We're neighbors with each other. So my friends and neighbors send their kids to charter schools. I send my kids to regular public schools. We shouldn't be enemies with each other. We're just trying to get our kids educated. And so that's my priority is you know, you see it in elementary school, let's just be friends.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arnott?
Sure. So I believe that we need to close low-performing schools down, charter schools down. So the district needs to do its job and close those schools. We do need to expand great performing schools, and that includes charters, it includes pilots. But Melanie, I think that what I would be really interested in as a governing board member would be, why are people running away from the school? Why do they want to come to a charter? What is it that the school isn't giving them now that they want to see and want to come and bring to why they want to join the charter school? And then that gets to the heart of what we need to improve in our district schools. I believe the money should follow the student, so I don't buy the thing about that it takes money away from the district, that the district doesn't know how to contract once it doesn't have the student anymore, right? And it needs to know how to do that and say, okay, we've got these programs that we can no longer do because the students aren't here, right? Instead, it's still operating with the same number of programs, administrators, etc., and the kids aren't there anymore. The last thing, and here's where I do agree with Mr. Thomas, is that it is about collaboration. There's a great collaboration at Sotomayor, one that I was part of with the community to say, can we have charter schools on the same campus with pilot schools, and can we all work together to make sure that the quality of education is high? And it's working. We've got a place where kids come and they choose the type of school they want to go to. It becomes their choice. That is so powerful when a young person can say, I want to go to the technology school. Oh, it happens to be charter? Okay, but I want to go to technology school. Or I want to go to the arts-based school. Oh, it happens to be a pilot school? That's great. And it's not about, to them it shouldn't matter whether it's a pilot school or a charter school, whatever it is, that it's a good school that they want to be at. And that's fundamentally the thing for me. We've got to have high-quality choices, not close those doors and say, tough luck, it's a charter school, we're going to close you down, and you parents come to the low-performing school, because that's what you deserve. You deserve to be in a low-performing school. That's wrong.
Mr. Kaiser?
Well, I don't know if anybody's saying that they want kids to go to a low-performing school. That's an interesting quote. You may find this ironic, but my wife and I are founding members of a charter school. The Open School, which had the first application to go in to become a charter school in LAUSD. Charter schools, as they were originally defined and implemented, were laboratories where innovation would take place. New techniques, new best practices for education would happen at charter schools. They were excused from certain aspects of the state education code, so they would have more freedom to become innovators. And that was happening. At Open School, because they were a charter school, they were able to get a grant to do some really high-end technology for kids who would generally be several years older in school till they would have the same opportunities. But in fact, what's happened, instead of having the charter schools continue to be, the application for Open School came from parents and faculty and other community stakeholders on that application. Now we don't have that. Instead of having individual groups say, we have a really good idea, we want to have a charter school to test it out, and if it works, we're going to share it with the school district and other school districts so that they can do it too. Now we have corporations buying charter schools and taking the district's money away. I disagree with Mr. Rodriguez here because it does take money away from the schools that have to keep spending on paying for school bonds to continue on the buildings that are standing with empty chairs because the students have gone to the charter school because of the cachet and branding of the charter school. The corporate charter schools are all the same. You don't find innovation from one charter to the next. It's like going from Burger King to McDonald's to Jack in the Box. You have 3 different kinds of charter schools, but as you look at what they serve each day, it's always the same, and it's the same as if you were in El Sereno or Silver Lake or Los Feliz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will allow a brief 30-second rebuttal.
Yes. Well, that's the problem, Mr. Kaiser. You see it as the district's money. I see it as the kids' money. And that's the problem, right? And I also believe the taxpayers are paying the bonds back. So that's the other piece. We've got parcel taxes for this. So we've got to give our families the options and the choices and let them tell us what they need.
Thank you.
I'll stake out the middle position on that. I agree with Mr. Rodriguez that the district doesn't know how to contract. I thought that was a great way to put it. And that's exactly the issue that I'm bringing up, is that I'm just saying recognize that issue. Yeah, we have to pay off bonds. We have to do some other things that are fixed costs that repeat every year. When a lot of charters are open during the middle of the fiscal year, the budget that we plan for at the beginning is different than the budget at the end. It's just a fact, and LAUSD is actually big enough that it can absorb this a little bit more. When it happens in very small districts, like in Pasadena, it's actually, they're reeling if they lose a classroom or a couple of classrooms of kids. So I'm just saying, let's be rational about it. Let's recognize that it is hard for these big districts or any district to contract and to deal with these costs. And maybe there's something we can do in our planning process to, because we're talking about all the kids, and we don't want some kids to suffer because other kids are benefiting. So
Thank you.
that's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Our next question that we have is once again from Daniel Vallecillo. Education is very important to the parents of LAUSD. What steps will you take as a board member in the second largest public school system in the nation to select a superintendent that shares similar values as parents do, such as increasing per pupil spending, increasing API scores, and providing more funding for arts, music, and after-school activities? We're going to start with Mr. Kaiser with this question, and I'm going to say the question one more time for you. Education is very important to all parents of LAUSD students. What steps will you take as board members in the second largest public school system in the nation to select a superintendent that shares similar values as parents do, such as increasing per pupil spending, increasing API scores, and providing more funding for arts, music, and after-school activities?
Well, when the last superintendent, Dr. Daisy, was hired, he was done without a national search. He was recommended by Mayor Villaraigosa. He was presented to the board for approval without any other choices. We talk about choice. The board was given really no choice because, well, the board members at that time were also selected by Mayor Villaraigosa. Now we have an opportunity to bring a replacement in, and we have as an interim superintendent, we have Dr. Cortinas. We're going to be doing a national search. The key things we're looking for is a superintendent who is there for the kids and therefore they're learning a well-rounded education. Somebody who is a consensus builder, somebody who is a good communicator. We want to have somebody also who has a better temperament than the prior superintendent. I think we'll find that person. It's not like there are hundreds of them around the country, given that we're the largest district with a school board and a superintendent, single superintendent. So there isn't somebody else who has a direct transfer of skills and knowledge. But darn it, we're going to do as best we can to find somebody who will grow into that in a very short period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
So yeah, I've advocated, and I would love to challenge the school board currently to put a process in place that includes community input. And what that would mean is that as the board members have decided, or the search committee has decided who the finalists are, those finalists come and are presented to our communities, that they get to ask questions of these candidates and that the communities get some input in a way that is authentic and real around who should be the next superintendent. That is really critical. We've got to be part of that process. And then we as citizens and members of these communities need to hold our governing body accountable and our superintendent accountable. And they in turn have to hold the superintendent accountable. I believe that that superintendent has to understand the great diversity and assets that exist in the city, and has to be able to be a champion for change and a champion for our kids and a champion for the future of this great region. And that person's got to be one that can also bring that board together and be able to work in collaboration and consensus building, so that things like consensus, collaboration aren't bad words in politics. They need to be where we start. And I believe, and I'm optimistic that we can find that individual. And I'm not sure you've got to do a national search, actually. I think that person is somewhere in this region already. And I think it's time for us to yes, you're right. But it's time to get the community involved in that process, and that's never happened before. We've got to get and hear from the community and be part of that process, selecting the next superintendent.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I think actually the three of us are in more or less agreement with this. We need somebody who's a consensus builder, somebody who communicates very well. Maybe I can add somebody with the instructional vision that really takes into account not only the diversity of LA, but I'd like somebody who said LA schools can be the best in the country, and who really wants them to do something unique and reach out, but it has to be something rational, not iPads, for instance. Something that has to do with really like the best math instruction in the country, the best science, getting our kids better prepared for the 21st century, bilingual, I don't mean bilingual education in the traditional way, but having our kids know more than one language would be something that would be an exciting vision that I would look for. And I also completely agree that we need a process of civic engagement. And after my recent experience with the parent advisory committee that's led by the school district, I actually would add one thing to that, which is I don't think that the school district should be leading the civic engagement around the superintendent. I would actually trust the neighborhood councils and other groups to do that. So I would actually challenge the rest of the city, civic groups, neighborhood councils, maybe even city council, the community groups, community coalitions, organizations like the Urban League, to step up and organize this sort of civic engagement and have their voice heard on what they'd like to see in a superintendent. I think that would be the best way to do it.
Thank you. A brief rebuttal.
My predecessor on the for Board District 5 did away with the committee structure on the board. I brought it back. We have, as a matter of fact, we'll be meeting tomorrow morning for the Budget and Audit Committee and tomorrow afternoon for the Early Childhood Education Committee. Those committees, besides having district staff, teachers, administrators, also have parents. I demanded that when putting the committees together. Of course, when we have a new superintendent, the search, there will be much opportunity with parents, with students, with teachers, with other employees, with other stakeholders.
Thank you. Was there any further rebuttal to this? No?
I would actually just add one thing, because it's really fresh on my mind right now. The district, in my immediate experience, as in 3 hours ago, has this idea about parent involvement, and this is what frustrates other parents even more than me, that we're in an advisory capacity, that they'll treat us as a focus group. They'll say, what do you think about, they'll give us a list of things and say, what's the most important? Vision, skills, community building. And you're supposed to check it off, and they think of that as input. And I don't mean to be like personally criticizing. I think it's an issue that the district has, and it's not real parent engagement.
I'll just add in 30 seconds that, do you all remember local control funding formula and those plans and the community input around that? That's what the district believes is really community input, and that's hogwash.
Thank you.
That was the system for Superintendent Daisy, and that's history now.
Right now, we're going to move to
I'd just like to say that we have been talking about a lot of negative things. Actually, they've been talking about a lot of negative things.
We already had rebuttal, but right now, we're actually going to start with you, Mr. Kaiser, for this next set of questions, even though you started with the next one, because it is about Prop 39. Okay, so I'm going to read this twice. This question to you, and you'll begin with your 2 minutes. So I thought Prop 39 provided energy efficiency funding for schools. What does it have to do with charter schools? Once again, I thought Prop 39 provided energy efficiency funding for schools. What does it have to do with charter schools?
Okay, that is a very confusing issue to many people. There's more than one Proposition 39. They get to a certain point and then they start the numbers over. The last Proposition 39, not the one we just voted on, if you read the big title on the ballot, it said it was to reduce from 2/3 of the votes to pass a school bond down to 55% to make it easier to pass school bonds. And a lot of people, including myself, voted for that, but we were tricked. If you look further down in the text of a multi-page, tiny font printing of the proposition, about 17 paragraphs down, you find this line that says charter schools can take vacant classrooms to be their own if they so wish. And nobody knew it. It wasn't in the ballot arguments. It wasn't on the ballot where people voted. They just slipped that in. And it's probably the Charter School Association that slipped it in. But they're the only ones who benefit from it, but they've caused a lot of grief all over the place.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
But that's the reason that Prop 39 doesn't have to do with energy efficiency.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, so you want me to ask the question about Prop 39? Because I think that was a response around the way that Prop 39, there's just 2 Prop 39s. But I can talk a little bit about co-locations. And so there's some great co-locations. There's Gabriela over at Logan Elementary in Echo Park, where that's working really well and that school is thriving. There are places where co-locations would make sense in order to modernize buildings and keep them functioning at a certain level that is bringing new kids into spaces that have room. But the district, again, does not know how to actually count the spaces, doesn't know, and creates this sort of archaic way of counting the rooms, all of those things. And so it does create tension in communities. And that's wrong. I agree with that. We've got to have a really thoughtful approach to Prop 39 co-locations, because that is the law. It was passed, the voters passed it, so it is what it is. And as a governing body, we've got to accept it and understand it and fulfill it. But we have to be thoughtful. We don't want tug of war between charters and traditional schools because of co-locations. But I go back to this thing about the buildings, the money, the district belongs to our students. And we have to fulfill the needs of what our students and communities want. If there is a community that prefers to have a charter school, and that means that there are empty classrooms in a school, then that school should be located there. But it has to be a thoughtful process with the community, and that doesn't exist right now.
Isn't your subject
Excuse
property
me,
line?
we will have no interruptions, Mr. Chavez. So if we are having interruptions, then this is your warning. If we have another interruption, then you'll be asked to leave, Mr. Chavez.
Good.
Thank you.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The property name for co-location.
Mr. Thomas?
So Sam, I don't have any direct experience with co-locations. The school on our street, Mitchell-Trina Elementary, had a co-location that didn't work out, and I just talked to a parent today about that who said that, and she sends her child to the charter school, and her experience was that the co-location itself was mismanaged. There wasn't anything inherently bad about putting the school there, but that there was so much misinformation and acrimony going on between the two parties that really poisoned the water. So I'm just saying that's what she said. And she was distressed because she just wanted to send her kid to a good school, and now her kid is at that charter. So I think there's probably something to the fact that these things need to be managed well.
Thank you.
I'd like to add the example that my opponent gave of Gabriella and Logan schools. Logan School, because now the campus is full, it was overcrowded, enrollment went down, we built new schools and changed the service boundaries so that Logan was no longer overcrowded. Gabriella came in, filled up the empty space of the campus, is overcrowded again. And if neighborhood kids want to go to Logan School, they can't necessarily get into their own neighborhood school because the charter is there taking up the empty space.
Thank you.
And likely they'll be bused to another place outside their neighborhood.
Are there any further rebuttals? No. None. We will move on to